Hello, everybody. I'm Randy Mills, your Sports History Now host, where we bring Kentucky's greatest sports memories alive, one story at a time. Sports History Now. You can find previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on YouTube. And you can view all Sports History Now podcasts, including a selection of Kentucky sports documentaries, on our website, sportshistoryfoundation.org. And today, I'm joined by Mike Fields, one of the state of Kentucky's all-time great sports writers, in a state where we're proud to have produced numerous Hall of Fame sports writers, including Mike. And in fact, it's been stated that the two best high school sports writers in the state over the past 65 years are Bob White of the Louisville Courier-Journal and Mike Fields of the Lexington Herald-Leader. You can hear a tribute to Bob White on episode number 8 of our Sports History Now podcast, and today we bring the guy who wrote for over 40 years, 35 years as a featured sports writer for the Lexington Herald-Leader prior to his retirement in 2015. And Mike was described by one of his former colleagues, Josh Moore, as the beginning and the end of what was happening across fields and gymnasiums across the Commonwealth. And said one appreciative high school coach, "If you made it into a Mike Fields article in the Lexington Herald-Leader, you had arrived." Good stuff. So, Mike, to pursue this career, and first, welcome.
Nice to be here with you guys.
Of course. In pursuit of this sports writing career, I assume that it would probably be an understatement to say that you grew up with a love of sports.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about some of those memories of the home you were raised in, maybe of your parents' hometown, and all leading into your high school years.
Well, I was actually born in Pikeville, Kentucky. My dad worked for Southern Bell Telephone Company, and he was transferred a few times when I was young. And born in Pikeville, then we moved to Bardstown, and then back to Paintsville. I went to the second grade at Our Lady of the Mountains in Paintsville, and then moved back to Bardstown, where I grew up I think we moved back in 1959, and went to grade school there and high school, and then went off to UK college. But I always had a love for sports, played year round. Back in those days, you played neighborhood ball,
Right.
Pick up baseball, pick up basketball, pick up football, touch football, tackle football. If whatever the season was, we played it. I played, of course, organized Little League and Pony League and Babe Ruth and American Legion. But I just always loved sports, was addicted to sports at a young age. My dad wasn't that big a sports fan. He watched, Vince Lombardi was the everything to him. But I just, and newspapers went along with it. We subscribed to the Courier-Journal and the Louisville Times and the Kentucky Standard, the Bardstown paper. I consumed box scores, at breakfast every morning. And just, I never really thought about making a career. I didn't realize you could do that, really, even though I was reading, the Courier-Journal and Louisville Times sports writers. But I went to college thinking, I'll major in journalism and see where it takes me.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember maybe in your middle school years or high school years a few outstanding athletes maybe in your area, or that you were reading about a little bit in the newspaper? I know in my household, of course, we had some of our sports heroes and all. And did you have that as well?
Well, a few years ahead of me at St. Joe, I was still in grade school, but Jeff Van Note,
yes,
a great football player. St. Joe was a boarding school too, so we got kids from Ashland, Ohio, Louisville. I mean, it just wasn't just a local school, so we had great athletes, there. Jeff was probably one of the biggest name that I can remember when I was a kid, realizing this was a superstar.
Right. So as you made the choice to go to UK, had you decided early on to major in journalism, or did that just kind of percolate?
I did. I always enjoyed writing,
Uh-huh.
and I liked English. I was terrible at math, terrible at science, terrible at anything that involved numbers, but words were my friend, and I always had a affinity for writing. And I remember I'd fill out I don't know where I got it, but a writing test, and you fill it out and send it in, and then you get it back, feedback. I'm sure it was a scam. but they told me I had an aptitude for writing, and so that's the way I went when I got to UK journalism. Words, English, I enjoyed that, and steered clear of math and science.
Right. Were you able to do any writing during the college years?
Yes, I worked at the Kernel, like
awesome.
most people, and I.
In the sports section?
Yes, in the sports section. That's all. I gravitated to that pretty quickly.
So you were covering University of Kentucky football and basketball teams.
At that time, the sports editor, I think it's Mike. Gosh, I feel bad. I can't remember his name. Mike Wines or somebody was a sports editor at that time, and you took turns, and I would cover a couple UK football games or a couple UK basketball games. I remember when Frank Kersey was there as the new football coach. I went and did a story on his recruiting, and I remember, the coolest part was I had a duplex living with 3 or 4 other guys from Bardstown, and I'd have a UK game coming up, and in those days I'd be at the duplex and I had to do a preview on the UK game. Well, they say, well, I got to call Coach Rupp this afternoon, and you call the office, the UK office, and they put me through Coach Rupp. This is Mike Fields with the Colonel. And my roommates would get on the extension in the other room so they could hear Adolph talking.
Exactly.
And I thought that was so cool. But here nobody like me was getting to call up Coach Rupp and talk to him about the upcoming game. And it just blew me away. And I think that's what hooked me.
Yeah, what good training.
Yeah.
And I think maybe during your years, was Commonwealth Stadium opened?
No. It was Stowe Field.
Okay, Stowe. You were in the good old Stowe Field.
And we went to the Coliseum, was the best place in the world to watch basketball, and I didn't miss a game in 4 years. And we'd camp out all night to get in, and we'd be in the lower section, and that place was full and rocking, and I got to see Pistol Pete come to town. Because my freshman year was 69-70, which is Issel, Pratt, and those guys. They were number one in the country. Yes. So I just hit the lottery there.
He did, for sure.
It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Football, not so much.
Yeah, right. Well, then as you moved, of course, into your senior year of college, and now you begin to think about a vocation that may lie ahead. How did your journalism career begin?
Well, actually, after I graduated from UK, I was young. I started school when I was 5. I was always the youngest. Every year of my education, I was the youngest kid in the class because I was, my birthday was in January. Like, I went to UK. I couldn't even get into. I remember a bunch of guys. We went down to the Kentucky Theater to watch The Wild Bunch, a shoot 'em up western, and it was rated R. I couldn't get in because I was too young. So anyway, I graduated from UK, got a journalism degree. So I thought, well, maybe I should, go try to get a little more on my resume. So I went to Murray State for 1 year of graduate school in journalism, and did some TA work and that kind of stuff. And then I was working on my thesis on the Patty Hearst kidnapping, and I thought, well, I think I've run the gamut here. I wanted to get out and actually work. So I went to Editor and Publisher magazine that listed job openings in journalism, and I ended up having a choice between going to a place in Southern Illinois or Florida, small bi-weekly in Florida. I was like, I'm going to Florida. So I went to Florida and worked at the Eustis News, then the Lake City Reporter I was down there a year and a half.
Now, did you cover more than just sports in that setting?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. I'd have to cover city council meetings, school board meetings.
Right.
And the thing that scared the living daylights out of me, Lake City was a pretty small town, but it had some backward. There was some, let's say, racial tension there. Mm-hmm. And I remember we had all gotten off work, and our newspaper building was on Main Street. And after we had left that night, some guy came through with a shotgun and blew out all the windows of the newspaper building because of something we had written. And that again reaffirmed my thing. I need to keep in sports.
Yes.
So when I got to Lake City, I was sports, and then I came back to the Henderson Gleaner in Henderson, Kentucky. I wanted to get back home, so I worked there. Went over to the Evansville Sunday Courier and Press for a while. Came back to Henderson because it was a daily, and then in 1980, January of 1980, came up for an interview for the Lexington Leader, the afternoon paper here, and got hired as a sports writer there.
Now, how did you hear about that opening, and who was your initial sports editor, say, at that time? Like with the Leader.
The Leader, it was Rick Bailey.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew.
I'm familiar with certainly the name Rick Bailey. Yes, indeed.
Person. And then in 1983, the papers merged.
Okay.
And instead of having two papers and two people doing high school, two people doing UK, we had a combined staff, and I covered high school sports when I first got here with the Leader in '80, and then I became the main guy at the Herald-Leader high school sports for the next 30 years or 35 years, whatever.
Yeah. So you were able to jump pretty much into the high school scene when you moved to Lexington.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was helpful because when I was in Henderson, I got to know people in Western Kentucky. And even when I went to the Evansville Sunday Courier and Press, it was in Indiana, but my beat, it was a tri-state paper, so I covered all of Western Kentucky high school sports. So that was always so beneficial to me. I came to Lexington, and I was always so grateful. They let me kind of create my own job description. I didn't just concentrate on Lexington. I tried to make it a statewide. I had all contacts in Western Kentucky.
Absolutely, that was helpful. Yeah.
And I got to know people in the mountains of Eastern Kentucky and Ashland area, Northern Kentucky, and within 10 years, I had a pretty good network. I knew coaches from Paducah to Pikeville from Covington to Bell County.
Right. Yeah.
And that was always the best thing I felt like I did was my Friday notebook, where I mentioned kids, coaches from all over the state.
Yes.
It wasn't just Central Kentucky; it was statewide.
I want to talk a little more about the Friday notes and a lot about those years from 1980 to 2015, some amazing sports years on the high school scene here in Kentucky. But jump ahead just a little bit and say that you covered sports for that many years and just thousands and thousands of sporting events, and just thought it was so special, beginning in 2024 with the Bob White, Mike Fields KHSAA Media Service Award, named in your honor and Mr. Bob White's honor, presented to an individual in recognition of a career promoting student athletes, coaches, and officials throughout the state, as well as for devoted service to interscholastic athletics. And I know you're familiar with all these wonderful individuals. I want to give them a shout out. The initial winners, and I should say 2025. I may have said 2024, but I think 2025 was the first year. And we had Ivan Rice, Rick Shaw, and Gary Ball. And then this year, of course, we honored John Henson, David Thompson, and Mark Maynard at center court with you giving those awards. And just tell me a little something about, gosh, you're humble. You're an humble guy, and I've known you for many years, Mike. But my gosh, I mean, now we got to say that's when we talk about legacy, that's a pretty big deal. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and its meaning to you, if you would.
Yeah, I was blown away. It was in early 2025, Julian called and pitched this idea, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "We want to have an award like named after you and Bob White." And I said, I don't want any spotlight. But I said, if we do it, I'll do it if you put Bob White's name first, because he was the standard. He was the guy. He was such a good friend. And so, yeah, I was just blown away by the honor. it's something special. And I know I called Bob White's son, Kevin, and told him about it, and he was thrilled. And again, it was funny back when Bob was working, and there in the 80s, 90s. Bob retired in the early 2000s, but some people say the Courier and Journal and the Herald-Leader are competitors, rivals. But I would talk to Bob once or twice a week. He'd call me about something. I'd call him about something. We got to be such good friends, and it was a friendship I'll cherish always.
Yeah, that's super. Well, as we get into some more of the specifics of some of the games, coaches, and players you covered, I want to have maybe one more general journalism comment from you as far as how you felt about some of the deadline pressures, maybe any advice for young aspiring writers, and maybe just approximately how many sporting events did you cover during your career?
I counted it up one time. I don't know, it was in the thousands of games, football, basketball games. And I also figured out one time I think Kentucky has 120 counties, and I've been in and done stories in or reported from or covered games in, I think 101 of them. From, there's a few I've missed over the years, and that always kind of irked me that, these people that say they visited all 50 states. Yes. I wanted to say I did a story or had touches with all 120 counties. But, so I got relatively close, I thought.
Yeah.
But, it was, I had the best job in the world at the Herald-Leader. People say you didn't cover Kentucky and this or that. But I always found the high school sports were the best. And I got some gravy too. I love golf, play golf. I got to cover the Masters a couple of times. I went to, after the high school season was over, I helped cover. I went to the '84 Final Four in Seattle. I went to the '96 Final Four in New York, and the '95 one here, and '97 in Indianapolis. And, I went to Derby once, which was enough. So, I got to do enough of other stuff where I felt like, I got a taste of that, but I always felt like my home and my main focus was on high school sports.
Meeting the deadlines, was it, I guess you have to have a certain kind of personality, kind of pretty driven, I guess.
It's, that's the absolute toughest part of it, especially back then, where we would have the Herald-Leader's deadlines. First deadline would be like 11 o'clock or something, and the game would be over by, 10:20 or 10:30, and I'd be out at Bryan Station and had to get a story in by then, and just the rush and the pressure, it was real. But I always, I think that was part of it. I kind of liked it. It's kind of a rush to meet a deadline and feel like you did a good job, and then there would be another deadline to rewrite, and you could write up to like 1 o'clock at night and get it in for the final city edition. So deadlines are the main reason why we have gray hair.
Sure. Well, let's take a little bit maybe of a sport at a time, if you will. You covered all the sports. Let's start with a little bit of football. There was a dynasty that's ongoing at Boyle County High School that I credit to Coach Chuck Smith. Here's what Coach Smith had to say. He said, "I don't know if there has ever been a player or coach that has done more for high school football in Central Kentucky than Mike Fields." So I'm going to throw a few names at you here and there, and ask for a few comments, and then there could be some coaches and players you want to mention. So go ahead.
Just on that note,
yes, indeed.
Last week at the Sweet 16, I was down in the media hospitality room. The guy came up and says, "Hey, how you doing, Mike?" And I knew who he was, but I couldn't. But it was Justin Haddix, the coach at Boyle County now football. And I said, "Justin, you've done a great job of keeping Chuck Smith's what he built there. It's going as good as ever."
Absolutely.
And because, like you said, Chuck Smith was the end-all, be-all of Boyle County football.
Yeah.
What he did there was remarkable.
Absolutely. Well, we've said that about Chuck. I guess one of the first obvious names is going to be Tim Couch.
Oh, yeah. I remember Joe Ruddle, who was then the assistant football coach, I don't think he was head coach yet, at Tates Creek High School. I was over there for something in early 94, maybe, 90. And he said, Mike, I got a name for you. He's going to be the next big thing you've ever heard of in Kentucky. And I said, who is it? He says, Tim Couch. He's a quarterback down at Leslie County. And I hadn't heard of him. Most, 99% of the people hadn't. But Joe was in the know about, he did All-Stars and all that stuff. But he said, look out for this guy. So I took his word for it. I went down to Hyden, Leslie County, for a practice, and Mike Whitaker was his coach.
Yes, that's right.
And I was asking him, and he said, yeah, I think Tim's like a sophomore or something. He's going to be playing on Sunday. And I hear this. You hear this about all players, and yeah, okay. Yeah, he was the real deal, and I went down there, I don't know, 4 or 5 times over the years to see him and do he was our preseason. Almost never happens. He was our preseason cover story as his junior year and his senior year at Leslie County, and it was, he deserved it. He was the most amazing quarterback I ever saw. You go to practice and Mike Whitaker would explain, you watch him. He said, watch Tim, and he'll say, the receiver will go like this or something where they want the ball, up here or down here, and Tim would put it right there. And it was amazing.
Yeah, tremendous University of Kentucky quarterback, number 1 pick. He did play on Sunday, number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Basketball stayed, a lot of folks say and all, but of course Tim was the national high school, offensive player of the year. And then right around that time too, you've got Dennis Johnson, the national defensive player of the year. And of course, the relationship, that you have with his father, Alvis Johnson. Yeah. Tell us just a little bit about the good old Harrodsburg Hogs.
that was amazing. Just, that he was, I think, suited up when he was a second grader.
That's what I tell people, Mike, and they think, they're like, that's what I remember. And Derek, I think, was a third grader. So Derek was suited up as a third grader, and Dennis is a second grader.
Yeah, and, it was just amazing. And Dennis, wasn't just a football player; he was a heck of a basketball player in the Sweet 16, and track star. And again, he was he was our cover story one year. We had him. They did a Photoshop back in those days. Half of his body was in a football uniform, half was in a basketball uniform. Because he could have played Division One basketball 6'7",
too. 6'7", I believe.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I see him every once in a while. Run into him. I saw him in a restaurant within the last 6 months and talked to him, and just what a great guy he is.
And doing a super job at Woodford County High School now as their coach, and really bringing back that winning tradition big time. A couple of coaches, a couple of mountain coaches, Dudley Hilton, Philip Haywood. Dudley pulled off a miracle kind of over there at Bourbon County.
That's still, I consider, the greatest state football championship in the history of Kentucky high school football, to take Bourbon County, which had never won anything, and I forget the details now about the last time they had even had a winning season before he got there, and in the road they had to go through to win this championship, and to see him take them to win a state championship was still the most remarkable thing. One of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in my life. And I remember him standing on the bench after the game off one of the tables, and his arms in triumph of the greatest story ever told in football. It was amazing. And then he goes back, he won at Bell County, and still at Bell County. I saw him at the Sweet 16 last week.
That's cool.
And he was talking about, I think he's 77 now. He says, I'm still going strong.
Oh, isn't that amazing? Yeah,
and he's just
big time at Bell County.
And he grew up. He was a few years older than me, 2 or 3 years older than me. But he grew up in Springfield, Washington County. I was in Nelson County and Bardstown. So I knew his name even back then, because everybody said, "Oh, Dudley Hilton over at Washington County," because he was a heck of an athlete. But what a character he is.
I'm thinking Dudley's second on the all-time win list now of high school football coaches in Kentucky.
Yeah,
and of course, number one, we want your remarks on the Belfry High School, far Pike reaches of Pike County. Philip Haywood, and I think 491 career wins, 8 state titles, 14 times in the state championship game itself. That's Philip Haywood.
Yeah, and the kindest. He wore his faith on his sleeve, a Christian man, and just, they were kind of Dudley the character and Philip the preacher man, kind of just what a wonderful person he was. But I went down to Belfry and covered when he broke the state record, and just that whole community came out, and that was a sight to behold. Him on the sidelines when they clinched that victory, him became. It just blows me away. When I first started, Garnis Martin was the great coach at Bardstown High.
Right.
But at some point, I remember doing the story when he became the winningest coach with 270 wins, and that was unbelievable. Yeah. Now Philip Haywood has 200 more than Garnis had. It just can't.
That's mind blowing.
It is mind blowing.
Yeah.
I know they coach longer and there's more games in the playoffs, but still, 200 more victories than what used to be the record.
And I know one thing that you appreciate, Mike, and how you talked about enjoying the high school scene. When you think about the Dudley Hiltons, the Philip Haywoods, we will mention, plan to mention other basketball, baseball names. What that means to those communities and how many young lives they've touched, and the sense of pride that's developed. That's pretty cool. You feel that sometimes in writing those stories.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's documenting. I mean, and that's the great thing about high school sports is what it does mean in these small communities. Sometimes that's one of the few positives they have to cling to that gives them pride in their community, and Bell County and we go through Bell County on our way to Hilton Head, me and my wife, and we pass by Log Mountain there in Bell County every time we go. And I always think I should call Dudley, but if we do, we'll never get to Hilton Head because Dudley will talk for 4 hours.
Super guy.
Yeah, it is. It means so much to what they've done for their communities.
Well, Mike, on the baseball front, you don't have to drive too far to get over to Harrison County. And I've got to start with Mac Whitaker when we talk high school baseball in the state of Kentucky. Tell me, and building a dynasty in a small town, Cynthiana, Harrison County High School. Wow.
Yeah, I remember in the early '80s when they got to the finals and lost to East Carter on I think a home run in the bottom of the 9th inning, and I thought, okay, maybe this was Harrison County's shot. Mm-hmm. Oh no! They became, like you say, a dynasty, and it was through the forced personality of one guy, and Mike Whitaker, and his devotion to baseball. He wasn't an easy guy to play for. He was a tough coach, but you talk to his players, and he gave them something important, and he gave Cynthiana something important. Harrison County, something they could. They were the kings of Kentucky high school baseball. Him and Bill Miller, PRP, were pretty heated rivals. And finished. They were 1-2 in wins for a while.
Okay.
But Mac, again, he's one of those coaches. It kind of relates to. I'm sure we'll talk about Billy Hicks of Scott County. You see him on the side. You see Mac in the dugout, coaching from third base, just being this manic,
intense
discipline, intense personified disciplinarian, and then you see him out away from that, and what a nice guy. And I think I wrote a story about that one time, how he's kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, but a lot of these coaches are, they when they're in on the court or on the field, they're focused on one thing, and that's their sport and making these guys winners.
Very true. Well, early in your years in Lexington Herald-Leader, we had our only undefeated 40-0 perfect season state baseball champion in 1982, Don Richardson with the Madison Central Indians. Do you recall that team a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was one of the amazing. But you don't go undefeated in baseball. It's just.
Sure.
I mean, considering you're playing 3 or 4 times a week and you got pitchers, most high school teams have maybe one pitcher and mostly maybe 2 pretty good pitchers. Then it's a patchwork thing, and you've got every level of baseball, it's a bad bounce here, a bad bounce there. You don't know. Anybody can beat anybody. And to go undefeated and win a state championship. And Don was always, he was a quiet, humble, confident person. He knew baseball was his. He coached basketball too and got him to the Sweet 16, I think.
That's right.
In basketball, but he was kind of more like Philip Haywood, quiet. Not he was intense as anybody, but he was a little more on the reserve side.
And as far as just a couple of individuals here in our Lexington area, we've got, wondering if you've come across Austin Kearns, Walker Buehler, a couple of our best major leaguers.
Yeah, I watched, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan.
Okay.
So I have the package. So I turned on the other night to watch, and the Giants were playing the Padres, and they said starting for the Padres is Walker Buehler. I said, I didn't even know he was there, because last time he was with Philly or the Red Sox after he left the Dodgers. And I was shocked, and there he was. And I remember him when playing at Henry Clay, and I did a story on him because he was going to go to Vandy. And he's not a big guy, 5'10", 5'11", slightly built, especially in high school. And everybody was raving about this guy's, not play on Sunday, he's going to make it to the bigs. Yeah. And I thought he's not very big, but look at what he did. He won a world championship and for the Dodgers, and if not for the Tommy John surgeries, I think he'd still be. He may work his way back, but I think he's trying to get his 1-year contracts and prove himself, and so maybe hopefully he can get back to that dominance.
Right.
And then of course Austin Kearns was one of the best high school baseball players ever to come through Lexington, and he play at Lafayette, and you go watch him hit home runs onto the roof of Lafayette High School, and then the Reds were thinking about taking him number 1 in the draft, so they came and after a game one night and gave him a wooden bat, see if you can hit with a wooden bat. Well, he proceeded to hit a few home runs on top of the Lafayette school building with a wooden bat, and he had a short career, but it was an impressive career in the bigs.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
and I saw him not that long ago, and I forgot how big he is. I mean, that's an amazing thing. If you see baseball players, or especially baseball, you don't think of football players are supposed to be big, basketball players are supposed to be tall, but baseball players now they're 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", just he-men, and it's my hero was Willie Mays, and he was 5'10", 175 maybe.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world now in all sports, I guess.
We had girls basketball come on the scene, and maybe just a little bit of a tip of the hat to a few of the early days. I believe girls basketball was resurrected in 1975 in our state. But I remember some of the Irene Moore, Breathitt County, or the Sharon Garden, Lisa Collins, Laurel County, Roy Bowling, great coach, Lee Wise here at Lafayette. Were you able to do a little bit too on that side as well?
Yeah,
of course,
I sure
Mike.
did. Early on especially, and I remember after I worked at the Herald, after I retired, I did like 4 years of freelancing for the KHSAA, and one of the most fun things I did, I went down and did a story on Roy Bowling.
Oh yeah,
and just how he was the guy that got girls basketball on the map in Kentucky, and said that girls can play this sport. And I remember how he said he didn't want, the last thing he wanted to do, he was a baseball coach, he didn't want to coach girls basketball, but they finally talked him into doing it. He turned out to be the guy who got girls basketball going in Kentucky.
No doubt.
And Howard Beth at Marshall County was right up there too. And yeah, I remember some of those early years. It was always amazing, the early years of going to see, I think, Tate's Creek, Roy Walton, football coach, coached Tate's Creek girls to the Sweet 16 one year. And it was like, okay, he coaches football. He was a football guy, but they, he coached the girls. And the quality of play from those early, there were great programs like Laurel County, Marshall County, but in general, there wasn't a lot of depth across the state of great programs. But then if you went back and watched I'm sure they're on tape somewhere of those, late 70s, early 80s basketball, girls basketball compared to what it is now.
Right. With
like girls like Michaela Epps or, it's just, it's a whole different game.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's, again, another person. I go to the Sweet 16, you see everybody. I saw Donna Moore of Sacred Heart, who coached them to the dynasty. They won 3 or 4 in a row here.
Absolutely, yes.
And,
Sacred Heart,
people like her have just elevated the game so much that it's, I think her star player now was starting at LSU.
That's
this
right.
year.
Yes. Yeah. That's for sure.
So we've come a long way, baby.
Right. You know it. Absolutely. Wow.
Speaking of Roy, I want to revisit Roy Walton.
Please do.
He was the most maybe charismatic, colorful, funny coach I've ever encountered in my career. He was one of one, Roy Walton, and I think anybody that knew Roy would say the same thing. And just he was one of those, he could, bite a nail in two when he's coaching, but you get him away, and he was just a great guy. And along those lines, just a personal story. In the late 1980s, me and my wife were expecting our third daughter. I think we knew we were having a baby. And Roy said, and I was over talking to Roy, and I said, well, Coach, I may miss the game, your opening game or the second game, because my wife's due and I don't know when the baby's coming. So he said, well, Mike, if you name her Royetta, if it's a girl, if you name her Royetta, I will pay for her college education. I said, that's pretty tempting. So anyway, my daughter was born. We named her Mary Kate. And he always asked, well, how's Royetta doing? How's Royetta? He asked me that for 15, 16, 17 years. So she went to Lafayette. My daughters went to Lafayette. So she's graduating. She get the mail one day, and there's a card in there. I don't know who's it from. And it's to Royetta Fields. And it shows up, and it's a gift card that Roy had sent her. And it just blew me away.
And isn't that what we cherish, Mike?
Yes.
I mean, look at the relationships you develop with the coaches, with the young people. Oh, my gosh. That's just...
But he was a hoot.
Oh, boy.
He was a hoot.
So much to talk about when we think about our fabulous boys Sweet 16, the best high school state basketball tournament in America, hands down. Boy, I've jotted a few things down from the 1980s. That was one heck of an era. I'm telling you.
Great minds think alike.
Wow.
Because I wrote some things down here, and the first thing I had was the 80s were the golden years.
That's awesome.
I know there were King Kelly in the 50s,
indeed. Yes,
and
indeed.
Other great male teams in the 70s, but the 80s.
Well, you can hit on any of these games you want to, and obviously I've got the names Bobby Keith and Billy Hicks and some guys like that are just beyond legendary.
Yeah.
But check this out. So 1981 with Simon Kenton. You remember the great Mason County team, but here's Troy McKinley. He earns a scholarship at the University of Kentucky because of such a great performance for Simon Kenton.
In their school, it had a big explosion earlier in the year, which kind of put another twist on that.
Yes. Again, think about what that meant to the community then, to have that success. 82, of course. Just tell us, maybe we ought to hit on each one just a little bit then. Where were you sitting in 1982 when North Hardin had the ball out of bounds? I believe the score was 51-51 with 3 seconds on the clock, North Hardin ball. Probably going to overtime unless North Hardin scores. Tell me how Laurel County won that game then.
I was sitting dead mid-court, not 10 feet. At that time, the media sat on both sides of the court. And I was on the other side, opposite the benches in Rupp Arena at mid-court, thinking, like everybody else, it's going to go to overtime. North Hardin threw the ball out and went out of bounds or whatever. And I know the Chuck Broughton, the Laurel County coach, he had already, I talked to him over the years about it, and he was already figuring out what to do in overtime. He wasn't even paying half attention to what was going on. So the inbound of the ball, Paul Andrews comes, stops not 15 feet in front of me, launches it from half court, and dang, ball goes in. Most amazing thing. But within seconds, he was swarmed on. On the floor, covered,
right?
What they dog pile, they call it, and it was just unbelievable, unbelievable finish. You see these in the NCAA where they say these shots. Well, that's right up there with them.
Absolutely. 83, a great memory. Henry Clay beats Carlisle County. I tell people, Mike, I first tell them, we've got a 3 overtime game where Henry Clay beats Carlisle County and the score is 35-33. And they go, oh, whoa, or stall ball. I said, no. I can't, what's his name? Can't think Carlisle County coach's name. Craner Sloan. I said, they're turning their offense over and over, and they're passing it, and they're zipping it, and they're maybe not even dribbling, they're just getting good shots. And all. I said, this was as exciting a basketball game as you could ever have. 3 overtimes. We thought we were going to have a 4th overtime, but tell us a little bit about that game and the fact that we didn't have a 4th overtime when Henry Clay won it.
I just thought it was the greatest basketball game I've ever seen.
I appreciate it.
Again, like you said, people say, what?
Yeah.
35-33. But I remember sitting on press row, and you're usually detached, and I'm pretty good at not letting my feelings get in, but it was a Lexington team, Al Pruitt, one of the greatest guys that ever lived. But it was just such a tense game that people along press row, we get up and walk around between the overtime period just to gather ourselves because every possession was like gold. And then again, I think at the end of every regulation, somebody had a chance to win. I think it was usually Carlisle County, and they didn't. And it was the greatest, a matchup of the David versus Goliath, the small county school against the big city school. And then Steve Miller takes a shot, I think, from where I'm sitting in the left corner, and Greg Bates rebounds it. And I still have the picture, one of the pictures at home of him put back. His time ran out, and they won 35-33. And then, after the game, the Henry Clay players take the trophy to the hospital where Al Pruitt's wife is dying of cancer. It was just
absolutely
just an unbelievable game. I still, I think I sat down 10 years later with Al, and we watched it on videotape, and he was talking about it, just how remarkable it was.
Yeah. And the great games just keep coming and coming. Just right there and describing those, we had a amazing half-court last-second shot by Paul Andrews, and this was a last-second putback that ended that game. 84 was pretty cool. Fred Tisdale's Logan County team, I think, was just the second year of consolidation, the sort of thing that brings a community together big time after there might have been some acrimony about, we're losing our high school and we're just going to be one. That was also Bourbon County and Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, Jeff Royce hit so many, hit 2 or 3 game-winning shots. Actually, when you think of 84, unfortunately, first thing that comes to mind for me wasn't Logan County, it was Jeff Royce.
Yeah, that's that.
And Russ Day, had this, again, improbable state finalist because of one guy, Jeff Royce, who became a superhero for a week.
No doubt. Well, 1985, we talked about Tim Couch coming onto the scene, and hey, he's going to be a big thing. We found out about a pretty big thing coming our way in 1985 when freshman Richie Farmer in Clay County are sitting in the state championship game against Hopkinsville. Golly, no wonder we're talking about the 80s being so awesome, because Hopkinsville beat them by 1 point. Again, a 1-point game. But I will tell you this, as the public address announcer, I guess a KHSA official came down press row, or scores table row, if you will, and they said, if Hopkinsville wins, Wendell Quarles will be the MVP. And if Clay County wins, the freshman Richie Farmer will be the MVP.
The mustachioed freshman.
Yes.
He already had a mustache for the ages. Yeah, exactly. And he had gotten in a couple games the previous year. When he got in, I think first appearances for a minute, and he scored a point. So then that was the beginning, because he played in first player ever play in 5 straight state tournaments. But that was, and Bobby Keith. He had brought Clay County there so many times, and they never were able to get past the quarterfinals.
Right.
But finally, they served notice that him and Russ Chadwell and his brother were gonna, Richie's brother were gonna. In the next, they were in there for the duration.
Well, we'll have to have a few more remarks on Richie and definitely Bobby Keith. Let's get through here. And we had the big matchup this year where St. X beat Covington Catholic in the first round, and they were considered 2 of the titans of the tournament. And in '86, we had Clay County and Pulaski County playing in the first round. So in Richie's sophomore year, and I think Clay County had beaten Pulaski County a few weeks earlier, but Pulaski County got them in the first round. And then with Coach Dave Fraley, I guess Reggie Hansen and Coach Fraley's son, that was a heck of a Sweet 16. That 1986 Pulaski County deal.
Yeah, and then I would think they were considered underdogs in the finals against PRP.
That's right. Thank you.
Then Shannon Fraley drives the lane for a layup for the winning shot, and that was one of the greatest moments in Sweet 16 because his dad, Dave Fraley still says that's the greatest thing that he could have ever imagined. Absolutely. His son hitting the game-winning shot and win a state championship. It doesn't get any bigger or better than that.
And Mike, I know you and I are a lot alike, and we can close our eyes and see these things. And if somebody wants to correct me, they can. But I'm 99% sure Shannon Fraley was left-handed, and he went in there with that left hand, by golly, and made that game-winning shot.
Now I think he got into coaching for a while, but it's just. Those moments, you can't script it. The coach's son wins the state championship.
Yeah. So, golly, 1 point in '85. I just think that was 2 points in '86. Now we've got 1987. The 1987 Sweet 16, I believe, and I know you wrote about it, on Friday night when I believe Clay County beat LaRue County and Madison Central had a victory over someone. That foursome into Rupp Arena on that evening was the largest crowd to ever see a high school basketball game in the United States of America.
That's right. It was over 21,000. I wrote that. I had a note on that too. Yeah. Again, who would have ever thought you could have, they had some great crowds at Freedom Hall when it was going good. There are also some depressing finals. I think I went to the Owensboro in '80, I think. Doss maybe.
Sounds right.
It seemed like I think Madison Central was involved in a couple of the
they really turned out big time.
I think they had the first and second.
And then that Saturday morning, of course, Ballard was a winner.
Yeah, it was Madison Central, Oldham County,
there you go.
LaRue County, Clay County, 21,200 people.
Wow. Incredible. Well, there was a treat that Saturday night. The next night there was a treat because now we're back into one of those somewhat rare overtime state championship games. And again, you've kind of got the mountain community of Manchester, Clay County against perennial powerhouse Louisville Ballard. Ballard's got a guy. Like we say,
good.
They got a guy named Allen Houston who was all right.
Yeah,
he's a pretty good basketball player. Yeah. Wow,
proved that in the UT and the New York Knicks. That was.
Golly.
I remember after Clay County beat them in overtime.
Yes, that's right.
Bobby Keith, his first statement to me was after the game with the reporter scrum was, You know, these things are like chicken teeth. You know, they're really rare if you can get one. Winning a state championship, it's like chicken. Where did that come from? I guess that was Bobby Keith.
He was a master, wasn't he? Was he just one of the best that ever did it on the sidelines?
Unbelievable strategist. I mean, you know, Richie was 6 feet maybe.
Yeah.
Russ Chadwell could jump out of the gym, and they had the guy named Boxhead.
Boxhead Rawlings and Russ Farmer, of course.
But when they come out on the court and see their guys athletically compared to Ballard with Allen Houston 6'5" or whatever, it just, you know, I saw Scotty Davenport, the Ballard coach.
Yes.
I saw him at the Bob White's funeral, and he was talking then about we got to talking about the good old days, of course, and he was talking about what him and Bobby Keith, their relationship, how he would take his players down to Clay County, you know, play some preseason games, and just what that meant, that bond, you know, to expose his Louisville kids to the mountains, and the mountains to the Louisville kids. And it went beyond basketball.
Tremendous respect they had for each other and each other's programs.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, then they played the next year in Louisville.
You're right. Let's go on to 1988. We were that year in Freedom Hall. 1987 was in Rupp Arena. And Clay County was in a war Saturday morning where they beat PRP, and that's a war. I mean, Dale Mabry, he's another one. Nobody does it better than Dale.
Right.
And but here they come, Ballard and Clay County with the rematch. You had a phenomenal performance where Richie Farmer scores 51 points.
9 3-pointers.
With
with Allen Houston guarding him a lot of the night. And, you know, who had half a foot on him. And
man alive.
It's just...
but Ballard gets him. Ballard does get him on that occasion.
Am I mistaken? I can't remember. Was Richie the most valuable player?
He was.
Though?
Good
because
point.
Because of his 51 points.
So Richie was the most valuable player in his junior year and his senior year. That is right.
Yeah,
because of that performance and all.
His 51 was second only to King Kelly's.
That's right. King Kelly scored 68 points in what was then the third place game with the 1956 Sweet 16. So that was the second most points ever scored in a Sweet 16 game. So and we might mention, too, that during that stretch of time, Richie broke a long standing record of Wawa Jones. Wawa out of Harlan High School and a state champion, a tremendous UK athlete. But Richie scored 317 points. Like you mentioned, the fact that he played in 5 Sweet 16s, he scored 317 points during the course of those 5 tournaments to become the all-time leading Sweet 16 scorer. So,
and it's kind of sad when that tournament was over, because that was the end of the Richie years, and you knew how it had been so special from 4 or 5 years there, and in the last 2 with Ballard, and just what Richie. I still, people ask who the best high school basketball players you ever saw in Kentucky. Of course, I always say, like Rex Chapman and Allen Houston, and but I always put Richie in there too. And they said, he didn't do much in college. I said, we're not talking about college. We're talking about great high school basketball players at that level, what they did, and there's no argument against it. He was one of the greatest high school basketball players in Kentucky history.
Totally agree, without question. Most dominant, because he would pretty much score or assist on most offensive possessions. On most
I can see him to this day get the ball at the top of the key and kind of back his way down and just take a little short, 15-foot jump shot. Now, I went down to his final home game at Clay County in '80, I guess in February, or his last regular season game. And I remember my wife went with me. We drove up to the gym, and they were hanging. You could see them. They were hanging out the windows of the gym, because what he did for that community. Him and Bobby Keith.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a dynamic duo.
Oh, wow.
No two ways about it. So in '89, I think we had PRP beating Wayne County, the great Dale Mabry of PRP. But I want to give you an opportunity to say something also about Rodney Woods, and the tremendous job that he did at Wayne County.
Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest high school coaches we've ever seen. You know, for a guy who went to Tennessee, he did a pretty good job.
That's right. That's right.
But and I think he'd be coaching to this day if he, hadn't been unceremoniously let go. But touch on those back in the days. It struck me that when I was looking back, that two guys. We were talking about the '83 game. Henry Clay and Carlisle County. One of the Carlisle County players that on that team was David Henley, who was a pretty good player. He played and lost in the state championship game as a player, but then he came back and coached Holmes. He was the state championship winning coach at Holmes in
2009 maybe. Very good.
And I thought that was cool.
That's
but then I also remembered. It tells me how old I am, but I remember in '81 watching Madison Central lose to Simon Kenton when Alan Feldhouse Jr. Was playing for his dad, Alan.
Good point.
Alan Sr. And then in 2013, Alan Jr. is the coach of the winning championship team, Madison Central. And I always thought that was pretty cool. They made it as players and were
state runner-up,
heartbroken. But then they, and I think all of them said, I asked them both, I think, what it was like to lose in the finals but win. They said it's a totally different thing. Mm-hmm. When you're a player, you're doing it kind of for yourself and your team. But as a coach, you're doing it for the team and the community and such a bigger, take a bigger picture, macro rather than micro thing.
Yeah.
But that was another great tournament, 2013. When
that's right.
They were down to Ballard. And
that's right. Kenja Bosley makes the big shot, of course, along with Dominique Hawkins.
And how many times we mentioned Ballard?
Oh, I know.
They've got there so many times and didn't win with the teams you thought they would.
Yeah.
But I thought it was in 2013 when I think Chris Renner was the coach.
I believe that's right.
Of Ballard, and he was talking about, he handled losing in these championship games so well. He said, it seemed like destiny for Madison Central. So,
well, Mike, we've mentioned our winningest high school football coach, Philip Haywood, our winningest high school baseball coach, Mac Whitaker, and I'll tell you what, very dear friend of mine, none other than Billy Hicks from Everett's, Kentucky. He coached at Everett's High School, a little bit at Harlan High School. Of course, he had good success at Corbin. He became tremendous friends. Of course, he and Bobby Keith were great friends, great competitors in those Corbin-Clay County years. And then he makes his way to Scott County and builds the dynasty, really, of the next couple of decades beyond the 80s. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on our state's most winningest high school basketball coach, Billy Hicks.
He's again one of those coaches that we've talked about. Is completely different on the sidelines than he is personally. I got to know Billy pretty well over the 30 years he coached. I remember talking to him when he was at Harlan, or when he first started Everett's, and on up to when he coached at Scott County. And it was amazing that he was, you see him on the sidelines, you think he's a wild man, always on the officials, on his players, just this intense, so intense. You get him away, and he's a shy guy. He doesn't like, that's not his personality. He's a completely different guy. He'd rather be out fishing, not going to parties, not seeing people. He just wanted to be by himself at home. And I don't know, it breaks my heart, what he went through, losing his son, and that seeing his son coaching his son in the Sweet 16, his son coming out the last time and laying down and kissing the court before he left the game.
And that was his son, Tyler.
Yes. And then just the last few years I got to know Billy pretty well. Had some long conversations and did some long stories on him, And it always struck me just how people didn't know Billy Hicks. If they just went to the games and saw him on the sidelines, they should get to know him as a person, and how what a family guy he was, and
Indeed.
how he didn't want to be in the crowds. He wanted to be at home.
Right.
And it's just so sad we lost him.
Yes, I agree. And he had a super supportive wife in Betsy, of
Yes.
course. And Mike, that
And his grandson came and was the light of his life there.
oh yeah, for sure. And beyond these success stories, there is always that home front, like a Betsy Hicks. So Mike, tell us about the support you've had, because again, hey man, you're we were with Jason Boer, and he made the comment. He said, "Well, I retired from coaching after a successful stint at Holmes High School, and of course, Jason won the 2010 Sweet 16 at Shelby Valley. But then he went into being an athletic director. He was a middle school and high school athletic director combined at Pikeville High School, and he went home and told his wife Hillary, he said, 'My gosh, I'm going to all these middle school and high school events.' He said, 'I think it's taking more time than when I was a coach.'" And so we know that when you're out like that, it's just like the coach, if not more, being the sports writer covering all these high school games. So tell us just a little bit about the support
when it first
that
started,
you had.
It first started, they would play maybe Tuesday night, Friday night, but then over the years, they were playing every night of the week.
Yeah.
There'd be tournaments. During, I remember the Lexington Catholic had a big tournament after the start of the day after Christmas. So
Right.
or
There you
Thanksgiving. We used to go to my wife's family in Indiana for Thanksgiving. We had to stop that because Thursday after Thanksgiving there'd be a football playoff game.
Playoffs.
So I missed. I wasn't home a lot at night, but the good part was that my schedule was flexible enough where I could be home and see my three daughters. It's during the day I'd get my youngest off to kindergarten, and so I was, if there was something after school, I could work it to where I could do that. But my wife Denise, she put up with my hectic schedule for a long time, and she was glad when I retired. But
Well, we're thankful to her because we have a lot of your memories in print, Mike. So we want to thank her.
And it was good that she went with me till, it got to where she got kind of tired of sports. But she got to know the Roy Waltons and the Billy Hickses and these people, and it was.
That's so special.
But she knew I had a job where I didn't consider a job. I mean, I had a neighbor early on in the 80s. What do you do? And well, why don't you get a real job? Instead of just going to ball games. I said, I got it made going to ball games. This is a sweet life.
Yeah. One thought I wonder, I'm going to ask you to recollect anything you know about this team before your time and my time. We haven't had an undefeated state champion since 1948. Brewers. Where is Brewers, and what do you know about that? Are they way down there in Marshall County?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember I did.
Did you do
I
it?
would do every year when there would be an undefeated team.
That came, that made it, yeah.
Or there'd be somebody in, I think, Clay County made it to the Sweet 16 one year when they were undefeated. But anyway, it got to the point, even if, say, Scott County, I don't know if they were, but they were undefeated in early February and they got beat, I would call,
Barney Thweet.
Barney Thweet. I would call Barney.
Yeah.
Whenever they got beat, I said, "Barney, are you glad?" It was kind of like the Miami Dolphins.
Okay, because he was the star player for the 1948 Brewers team.
Yes.
Okay.
And I had him on my phone, and I would call him, and we got to be kind of buddies on the phone. And then I saw him at a Sweet 16 or two, and he would always say, we're thankful they got beat. And not that we were rooting against them, but it's nice to know we're always going to be the last undefeated team. And you would think,
gosh, it's unreal to think, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, they play such tough schedule, the really good teams. To win a state championship, you got to be really good. And they go out and play, the Beach Ball Classic or down in Florida and play all these nationally ranked teams. But
gosh, I mean, better not start recounting them, but, Larry Conley, 1961 Ashland, 1 loss. Wesley Unseld, Mike Redd, 1963 champions with 1 loss. I think about Lafayette. A lot of people don't realize that their only loss was in the district championship game, but they're one of the greatest teams of all time. 1979 Lafayette, 1 loss. And so it's just one of those records that still stands.
What was it? Did you say 48? So 48? We're going on 80 years?
I guess that would be, wouldn't it? Gosh. Yeah, it's just... And it speaks to the strength of high school basketball across the state of Kentucky and the coaches, the strategies. And
the fact that we still have the one Sweet 16. So somebody in a if you had 3 classes, some smaller school or middle-sized school wouldn't have to face the big school.
That's right.
But again, like you said, the Sweet 16, when you have, 96 was a great Sweet 16 with Paintsville, small school winning, and then again with Jason Boer and Shelby Valley.
Absolutely.
So
well, one thing, and I know you track down these stories, and as we move toward a conclusion, but the Mike Fields Friday Notes was a big deal, and a big deal in my house. It's a way I kept up with a lot of the teams around the state, a lot of the upcoming players around the state. Was a huge deal. How did you come up with that way of doing things on with Mike Fields Notes?
Well, I just kind of, like I said earlier, I kind of had contacts in Western Kentucky and when I first got here, and then I got to know so many people in Eastern Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, Southeastern Kentucky, and I just felt like it would be nice to give them a little link, And what always blew me away was, I'd have a couple items where there were several paragraphs, but a lot of times they were just a one paragraph thing where I boldface, Jimmy John down in Whitesburg, had 50 points, and then I'd hear somebody say, "Oh my God," I'd run into them years later. You got my name. I saw my name in the Herald-Leader, and I think, well, it was just you did it. They would say, "Oh, you did that story on me in the Herald-Leader." And I said, "No, I didn't. I just put your name in boldface in a paragraph." But
a paragraph in a story is a little different to you, but it wasn't to them.
Yeah, they appreciated it.
That's right.
And that was gratifying to know that I could shine a little light on these kids that may not get recognized other places, and it got to be a lot of fun just trying to dig up these, and it got to the point too where I wouldn't have to go seek them out. People would call and tell me about them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But like at the Herald-Leader, we'd have the morgue where the newspapers were, and I'd go back and look through all the weeklies and other papers and find stuff, and then give the coach a call or something.
Right.
So it kind of made itself when you have, during the basketball, football season, there's always an unlimited number of things going on. It got kind of thin at some other times of the year.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, Mike, we're forever grateful for the light that you shined on high school sports and how big you made it feel, and how important the coaches and players felt as a result of being covered by such a large statewide newspaper like the Lexington Herald-Leader. At the time of reflection a little bit, anything else you can think of that, as you think back over that wonderful 40-plus year career, quite a legacy?
No, just just how lucky I was to have that job and get to know so many people, and I'll be going to Speedway and be pumping my gas, and some guy comes up to me and said, "Mr. Fields," I said, "Yeah, you remember me? You wrote about me," and I'm thinking, you're 60 years old. Now you're a little different than you did when you were 17.
That's right.
But just having to get to know these people, and then you see them like Steve Flesh, the golfer.
Yeah. I
first met him at a Henry Clay Invitational at Lakeside Golf Course, like in 1982, 80, I don't know, early 80s, and met his parents. And at that time, he was maybe 5'5", 105 pounds, and he won the tournament. He was a little left-handed golfer. Well, then I keep up with him. He wins the state amateur. He wins the Kentucky Open. He goes to Kentucky. He's a great player, and then he gets on the PGA Tour, and he's, wins there 4 or 5 times. And now he's on the Senior Tour, wow. Champions Tour, and he wins. And I still got his number, and I text him and said, congratulations. It just blows me away that I've known this guy since he was a kid, and now he's on the Senior Tour.
That's fantastic.
And still,
And guys like that, I'll tell you, Mike, they never forget. I can assure you that he is appreciative.
Yeah,
he is appreciative of you being out there in that setting and taking the time and beginning to push his name out. That's just so cool.
But
something you feel so
many,
great
even
about.
The ones that didn't make it, it's nice to know that, maybe that was the, highlight of their sports life. And for most kids it is. I mean, most kids don't go play college. They certainly don't, most of them don't go play pro or
right.
And just the ones that, had I played high school baseball, and I remember how cool it was to see my name in the Kentucky Standard for having a single or a double,
That's right.
So I know where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes it special. Great afternoon together.
Well, I appreciate your taking time to listen to my
really
meandering thoughts. I told my wife, I said, I'm not a talker, I'm more of a writer. And
it's been wonderful. Randy Mills for Sports History Now. Gosh, we've just recounted some of the greatest memories from Kentucky high school baseball, girls basketball, our Sweet 16 tournaments, some of our football legends, and no one better to do that with than the legendary Lexington Herald-Leader, high school sports writer, Mike Fields. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. And before we close today's show, a big thank you to another of our Sports History Now supporters, Amanda Cutright and her family. The support of friends like Amanda helps us to continue to bring episodes of Sports History Now to life. Sports History Now, found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And you can also find Sports History Now podcasts and a selection of Kentucky sports documentaries on our website, sportshistoryfoundation.org.